Apparently.
Hi, Jerry. Make them all move on. Come on.
I could, I actually could, I should. All right, we'll get started here in about 1 minute.
Somebody should do something about that traffic on 81.
Thank you.
65.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Will everybody please rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance I'm going solo, I guess. The 9 o'clock has thrown people off apparently, but we have enough for a quorum, so it's good to see everybody's smiling faces and some new smiling faces as well this morning. But with that, we'll go ahead and we can have roll call, please.
Thank you. Good morning. Director Baines? Absent. Branscombe?
Yo.
Bradford?
Here.
Bullahan?
Here.
Chapman? Absent. Desmond? Absent. Dowden Calvillo? Absent. Frost? Absent. Gallardo? Here. Gog?
Yes.
Guerrero? Harris? Or excuse me, Boomgarden for Harris?
Here.
Thank you. Howdeshelt? Absent. Hume?
Here.
Jennings? Joyner?
Here.
Jones?
Here.
Nisley? Absent. Kozlowski? Absent. Lauren?
Here.
Lozano, Papanow for Lozano? McCully? Sander, absent. Schaefer? Yes, we'll note for the record he is here and on screen. Teeter? Thomas? Here. Guerra for Vane? Vega? Absent. Viegas? Vice Chair Soon, absent. Chair Saragosa?
Here.
And ex officio member Aceves? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lynette. We will now move on to our public communications portion of the agenda. This is a time for anyone who wishes to address the board on an item that does not appear on the agenda. And it looks like I have at least one. Jeffrey Targo, you're up. Good morning, Jeffrey.
Good morning, board. Jeff Tartagia, advocate for SACOG, CARA, various other. One of my concerns and questions to you is that you're effectively dealing with something that has an effect to 2050. And I see no recognition that by 2050 that our California community will be more than half over 65. And just want to bring that to your attention that, you know, by 2050, you are going to have more than perhaps 30 million that are over the age of 65 in California. And as you make these decisions, I see no consideration in recognition of the factor that you will have such a elderly community as part of your activities. That's what I want to draw attention to.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Do we have any other public comments this morning?
There's no other public communications.
Okay, it's good.
Elderly stings a little bit.
It's true. We all are getting to that, yes. Or are there, some of us, so yes. All right. No, thank you, Jeffrey. That's your comments are appreciated. Okay, we're gonna move on. Second here. Where's my Lynette, do we still have the disclosure? Okay, oh, here it is. All right, I'm looking
Yes.
for it. I see it. So this is a part of the agenda where we go over any disclosures for the conflict of interest law. And this is where if someone would have to recuse themselves according to state law. Are there any directors who need to disclose a conflict with any item that's on today's agenda? All right, seeing none, then we will move on to the consent calendar. We'll now, these items are intended to be approved in one motion. However, anyone can remove an item for separate discussion. Does any director wish to remove an item on the consent calendar? All right, seeing none, is there any public comment on the consent calendar?
There's no public comment.
Thank you very much, Lynette. I will entertain a motion.
Bradford will move to approve.
Lauren seconds.
Thank you. Do we need to do roll call, Lynette?
We do not need a roll call vote.
No roll call. Okay, then all those in favor, say aye.
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 Chair, I'm sorry, we actually do need to do a roll call vote since we have two remote. We don't have anyone on for 2449, but since we do have two remote locations. we need to do-
Understood. Okay, all right, then we will do roll call.
Thanks, Mike. Perfect.
Thank you, Mike.
Director Baines, absent Bradford,
Aye.
Branscombe,
Aye.
Boulahan,
Aye.
Chapman, absent Desmond, absent Dowden Calvillo, absent Frost, absent Gallardo,
Yes.
Gog,
Yes.
Guerrero, Boomgarden for Harris,
Yes.
Howdeshelt, absent Hume,
Yes.
Jennings,
Yes.
Joyner,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Nisley, absent Kozlowski, absent Lauren, Papanow for Lozano, McCully, Sander, absent Schaefer,
Yes.
Teeter, Thomas,
Yes.
Guerra for Ving,
Aye.
Vega, absent Viegas, Vice Chair Soon, absent, and Chair Saragosa.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, that measure passes. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for our colleagues over at the League of Cities joining us. So appreciate you all joining us remotely this AM. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to our first action item, and that's item number 5, the Sustainable Community Strategy Adoption Schedule and related state policy issues. Mr. Holtzen has this issue for us this morning. Thanks, Clint.
Good morning. I don't have a long presentation because we talked about this at the strategic planning retreat, at the committees, and then also at the board. We were just at all 3 committees. So this is about the extension. Can you not hear me? Any better?
Yes.
All right. This is about the extension of our long-range transportation plan, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, Sustainable Community Strategy. We're currently working on an update that we'll do by the end of next year, 2025. The decision and the recommendation in front of you is to direct staff to move forward with returning to our old schedule, which has us doing an update in 2027. And in the meantime, work with our partners at the state and other regions to try to get some changes in state law that would ensure we're still eligible for state funds should we go ahead with that 2027 update, which likely would not hit the greenhouse gas reduction target. So the recommendation from the Policy and Innovation Committee is for the board to direct staff to go forth with that 2027 update and work with our partners to get those changes in state law. I won't belabor the presentation much because I think we've had lots of conversation, but Christina and I are here to answer any final questions from the board on this.
Thank you, Clint. Is there any questions or comments? I know we've all seen this quite a few times and had some really good discussions, but really want to make sure everybody feels comfortable with where we're going with this, understands it fully, because this will be this is a big decision for us as a board. Anything? We have any public comment on this issue? We do have comment? No? Okay.
It's the shortest 20 minutes I've ever seen on the agenda.
I know, right?
Ain't over yet.
Yeah. Any public comment on this one, Lynette?
There's no public comment.
All right, then I will bring this back for further discussion or a motion.
Thomas move.
All right, Thomas move. We have a
Bradford will
second.
second.
Thank you, Gary. All right, can we have, I'll just make a quick comment. I just want to thank everybody for digging. I know we're not a lot of talk this morning, but we have had a lot of discussion on this as we move forward and a lot of good questions, a lot of extra time being put into this. I do think this is the right move for us to go forward, taking this option, and then working with our other, the other COGs across the state as well as CalCog to try to move forward some changes. I know if y'all looked in your packet and you saw Bill's letter about all the things that have changed since SB 375 first passed and where we are today, and so things really have changed, and so there is, I think, a good opportunity for us to take a look at it. And 2025 is probably the year to do that as opposed to 2026 for a lot of reasons. So I do think we're on the right path. And with that, can we have roll call, please?
Thank you. Director Baines? Absent. Bradford?
Aye.
Branscombe?
Aye.
Bullahan?
Aye.
Chapman? Absent. Desmond? Absent. Dowden Calvillo? Absent. Frost? Absent. Gallardo?
Yes.
Gog?
Yes.
Guerrero? Boomgarden for Harris? Howdeshelt? Absent. Hume?
Aye.
Jennings?
Yes.
Joyner?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Kozlowski? Absent. Lauren? Papanow for Lozano? McCully? Sander absent. Schaefer?
Aye.
Teeter? Thomas?
Aye.
Guerra for Vang? Vega? Absent. Viegas?
Aye.
Vice Chair Soon? Absent. And Chair Saragosa?
Aye.
And
And
Lynette,
Director Nisley, I apologize if I didn't wait for your vote. Can you indicate your vote, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Just,
James, you
Chair
want to make some
Saragosa, yeah,
comments? Yeah.
I think we've said this, and I do appreciate the board's discussion, deliberation on this. I think this is exactly the kind of thoughtful, intentional discussions you need to have on things like state policy. Couple of things, if you saw in our executive director update that we sent out yesterday, we have sent what we call a Big Four letter. That's the four largest regional planning agencies in the state to the California Air Resources Board, asking for the beginning of this engagement on these discussions. And if you remember, it's hard to believe it was just a year ago. I'm trying to, AB 350, the bill that we worked on to extend our planned timeline. We engaged every single one of you in that. You signed on to sign-on letters, you weighed in, we had meetings in the Capitol, you reached out to it's gonna take this level of effort over the next 2 years. As I said to Director Hume earlier, this is not an easy task, right? But I think it's one whose kind of time has come. So looking forward to that work next year. And again, we really as staff appreciate your deliberations on this and your direction. Very clear.
Thank you, James. I also want to thank our advocacy team as well, both in-house and contract, for all the work on this. It's a big lift, and appreciate all the work that's gone into it. All right, we will move on to item 6, which is our regional funding program guidelines. And Christina has this item for us this morning. Thank you. I think it's still low. Your mic is, I don't know if it's not on or.
It's not. Now it is.
All
All
right.
right. All right. So today we are going to talk about our regional funding program guidelines. Over the last, I would say about 2 years, we've been working at the staff level on developing these guidelines. The board has taken action twice on the framework pieces of that, and you can see that here on your screen in February and August of this year. Today, what you're going to be looking at is the guidelines. So the framework sort of built out the overall structure of how this program is going to work. The guidelines really kind of fill in the gaps and fill in the really important information that we need to kind of better define what this program is going to be. So the guidelines were developed through a lot of input at both the board and staff level through our working groups that have since ended, since we're at the end of this process. So as a refresher, the funding program was redesigned to align with funding sources, something that hadn't been done before, to make our funding decisions more clear. Additionally, the programs are designed to better articulate our region's goals that have been established here at this agency, but also at the local levels as well. So things like meeting our performance objectives are really important in policy goals, but also positioning our region to be more competitive for other funding sources at the state and federal level are really important components of this, along with aligning with our MTP and CAPTI goals and other VMT GHG goals that we need. And equity. And equity was a really big consideration that we took into account this time and have incorporated into this process more than we have in previous funding rounds as well. And at the center of this, obviously, are things like focusing on maintenance, state of good repair, fix it first elements, and an urban and rural needs balance, recognizing that our region is very different from one another, and sort of building on that and leveraging those assets that we have across the region and making sure that there's more certainty in funding for everyone here in our 6-county area. So in addition to those major programs that you adopted already, we also have our priority programs, and that's these 6. EEI, Sustainable Mobility, CCAT, and Spare the Air are carryovers. Those are things that we have done historically or just recently in the past year or two. We have proposed to add 2 new programs that you have already approved through the previous actions, which is the Regional Pavement Management Program, which will help set up our local agencies to better understand their pavement needs for rehabilitation of their local roadways, as well as the Freeway Service Patrol, which is a service that we already offer, but we're looking at sort of making this more of a priority for our region. So what's new since August's framework? I'm going to hit on 3 key things here today that have helped sort of better define our guidelines. We expanded on criteria and eligibility for both the state and federal programs. We've also proposed application limits for the federal programs. And then we've included some specific language to address some needs that were identified at both the staff and board level. Farm to market and agritourism has been added to one of the federal programs. And I'll go into each of these a little bit more. So on the criteria side, we are looking at having both a qualitative and a quantitative discussion. So on the qualitative side, we really want our agencies to be able to articulate the benefits to their community. And this includes equity, safety, and climate considerations, basically allowing our jurisdictions and our partner agencies to be able to say what these things mean to them and what they look like in their communities. And also part of that is community engagement. We want to make sure that if you are defining an equity priority community area or trying to address some sort of community group, that those folks are engaged early in the project, and we want to be able to assess that when we're making our funding decisions. It's important to think of these as partnerships with our community as well. On the quantitative side, we are obviously going to be very data-driven as well in this process. So we have resources like the Project Performance Assessment Tool, Transit Asset Management tools for our partners to use to be able to illustrate what those benefits are of performance outcomes. And then also cost effectiveness and CMAQ calculations are really important and required. So that's on that side. As far as the application limits, we're proposing that for the federal programs that there's an application limit of 3 applications per program per agency. So since there's 3 federal programs, that would allow for a total of 9 applications across all of those programs that an agency can submit. Historically, we have asked for a prioritized list, but sometimes we get a lot of submittals and it's difficult to understand what really are the priorities. So this is an effort for our partners as we have 2 more counties and their jurisdictions coming into this process, have our counties and our agencies be able to really illustrate what their priority projects are that they would like for these different programs. On the farm to market and agritourism side, we did receive feedback during the process about including these within the system preservation program, which is the program that's focused on road maintenance and rehabilitation. We had already identified some road types that we wanted to focus on, things like transit corridors, active transportation corridors, freight routes, things that we know get a lot of volume and traffic and therefore probably have a higher need for maintenance. What we didn't clearly articulate was something specific to maybe our more rural and agricultural areas, and that's farm to market and agritourism. And so up on the screen are the definitions that we came up with for these roads, and there will be data requirements for these as well. So what comes next? So as we wrap up the guideline component, the next step is going to begin diving into our funding elements of the program. SACOG staff will be working to solidify the potential funding through our sources, our main sources, which is CMAQ, STBG, and on the state side, our STIP funding, to create an initial draft estimate. As part of this work, policy decisions are going to be coming to you all to make when we start to look at the money. So on the state side, the way the program is set up, if you remember, is there's the inter-county competitive programs, and then there is still a pot of money that is going to be pulled together to support a regional priority, a regional project. This only applies to 4 counties, so everyone in Yolo, Yuba, Sutter, and Sacramento. So we're going to need to talk about how that funding is split between those 2 programs. And on the federal side, the STBG is going to fund 2 programs, system performance and system preservation. We need to figure out what that split is going to be as well. How much money do we want to dedicate to pure maintenance versus maybe some more expansive projects? CMAQ, this doesn't apply to it because that is just a single program. All right, so I know this is a little hard to see, sorry about that, but this essentially just gives a timeline of what we need to do next. So what we do know in terms of timing is that we need to hold the state STIP call for projects in the first quarter of 2025. We have to submit information to the state by August for the Regional Transportation Improvement Plan. And in order to do that, if we go backwards, we probably need to have this being in the awards for the state program in front of the board for adoption by May or June at the latest. So we plan to do a call for projects in about March of this year, which means February, we likely will be bringing fund estimate for the state portion, for the state program. So we're going to start talking about that. Maybe we'll bring an info item towards the end of the year so you can get a glimpse of what we think the funding looks like to be able to sort of have conversation and then come back. On the federal side, there's a little bit more that kind of goes into this. The really important thing with the funding is that this is really going to dictate, I think, when the board decides to do the funding round itself. We have 6 counties now. We want to make sure that there's enough funding in there for this to be a meaningful process for all of the partners in the region. And so with that, I think we want to feel really good about the amount of money that we have available. So we likely will start to bring some scenarios towards the middle of the year, towards maybe middle to third quarter of the year, to be able to start to talk about that and hopefully bring something before the end of 2025 to make the decision of what the budget is going to be, what the split with those programs is going to be, and when we're actually going to hold the funding round. So with that, we had this at the Transportation Committee 2 weeks ago. The committee unanimously recommended that the board approve the funding round guidelines. And so here's the recommendation in front of you. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Christina. Do we have any questions or comments at this point? Yes, Director Hume.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to call out and thank staff for the inclusion of the farm to market program. I know it's a slight departure for SACOG to be including this, but certainly for my colleague to the left, as well as my colleagues from other rural counties, agriculture plays an important part in our tax base and in our industry. Sacramento County alone, it's almost $600 million a year sector. And so it's important that we recognize that, we honor that, and that our roads compete because we don't have the population certainly in some formulas. And so I look forward to as we sort of refine and hone this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Yes, Director.
So I just, I guess ditto to that. Staff from Sutter County has attended, participated in the working group meetings. We appreciate the incorporation of the farm to market definition in the system preservation program and the project eligibility criteria that limit each agency to 3 applications per the federal program categories and in consideration of the funds available to our region. And so going forward, we'll pay particular attention to the funding estimates that will come before our board prior to the call for projects to confirm the rural agency programs receive an equitable allocation. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Director Thomas.
I know I've mentioned this before, but I just need to reiterate as the chair of the board group for the funding round, I could not have been more pleased with the outcome. And I thank Director Hume and Baines for recognizing the addition of the farm to market and as the importance of adding that to this initiative. Also, the agritourism as we worked with all the complexities of our vast and diverse region, while many of our regions have, freight going from farms to direct consumer. In El Dorado County, we import people to our farms. And so once again, what's before us today reflects the diversity of our region. And I just want to commend our staff and everyone that participated in the staff working group as well as the board working group for working through all these nuances to get us to where we are today. I think we have found common ground across our diverse region, which will benefit all of us. And I also have a message from Woody Deloria, who chaired the staff working group. He couldn't be with us today, but he wanted me to pass on that is the funding round chair. He was very confident in the outcome of the work and supports staff's recommendation before the board today. The working group was very pleased with the effort to listen to all the needs of the region and include maintenance and agritourism farm to market as priorities. So fabulous work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Thomas. Yes, Director Branscombe.
I lived in Texas. I lived in Dallas for several years and spent a lot of time at a weekend place in rural Texas. It was a couple years into it before I asked someone, well, what's FM mean on a road number? Farm to market. Labeling farm to market is a nice thing. I think that'd be a neat feature. If it's going to be a farm to market road, don't just give it a number, call it a county road. It's a farm to market road. They're way ahead of us.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open up public comment. I do have at least one, who is Rick Carter from PCTPA. Welcome, good morning.
Good morning, Chair and Board. I'm Rick Carter with the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, and I just wanted to take a moment to recognize and commend the SACOG staff, particularly Chris Doherty and Christina Svensk, on responding to my numerous questions. I've been involved in the SACOG funding round for close to 20 years. And with this change, I had lots of questions. I'm sure at one point Chris was probably tired of hearing from me, but he responded to everything. I really appreciated the work and the collaboration, and I think we've got a good program here, and I just wanted to recognize your work. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate those comments. All right. Do we have any other public comments on item 6? All right.
There's no other public comment.
All right, then we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board for either further discussion or motion.
Chair, if there's no discussion, I'll go ahead and motion.
This is Hume. I'll second it.
Great, thank you both. All right, with that then, can we have roll call, please?
Thank you. Director Baines,
Aye.
Bradford,
Aye.
Branscombe,
Aye.
Bullahan,
Aye.
Chapman, absent, Desmond, absent, Dowden Calvillo, absent, Frost, Gallardo,
Aye.
Gog,
Yes.
Guerrero.
Yes.
Thank you. Boomgarden for Harris. Yes. Howdeshelt. Absent, Hume.
Aye.
Jennings,
Here. Yes.
Joyner,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Nisley,
Yes.
Kozlowski,
Yes.
Lauren,
Aye.
Papanow for Lozano, McCully, Sander absent, Schaefer.
Director Schaefer had to leave, so he'll be marked as absent.
Thank you. Teeter, Thomas,
Aye.
Guerra for Ving,
Aye.
Vega, Villegas,
Aye.
Vice Chair Soon absent, and Chair Saragosa.
Actually,
Chai
I think
Chun is here. Aye.
Thank you.
he joined us, yeah.
Motion carries.
And I for yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynette. Lots of moving parts this morning. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move to our next item, which is item 8. And this is our workshop for this morning. It's, oh, did I skip 7? I did skip 7. I'm sorry. I was like, I know, I was like, things are moving so fast this morning. I wanted to skip a whole item. So item 7, our regional project prioritization program. Christina has this item for us as well.
I'm
Back for round 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't get enough. So, all right, this is very complementary to the item that you all just heard and adopted. This is our regional project prioritization process. So, if you remember in March, the board adopted the first ever prioritized list of projects for major federal grant programs. This was very well received by our region's representatives in Washington, D.C. during our Cap to Cap trip and contributed, we really believe, to some high scoring projects and some awards, including a $25 million raise award for the Grant Line Road project, which is, you'll see is on this list again. We have since expanded the program. If you remember, that was a little constrained because of time and wanting to focus on sort of some of the big projects that we knew were coming up. We've expanded this to include more programs, but also have 2 different categories. We have the construction projects. These are shovel-ready projects. They're looking for funding to actually start construction. We have project development projects, which are more in the planning stages. They may not be ready to apply for something. They might be ready to apply, but for planning, just not construction. And then we also synced this up to be able to prioritize projects for our Senate bill or SB 1 program at the state level, which is the Solutions for Congested Corridors program and our Trade Corridor Enhancement program, or TSEP. So real quick on the process. So we began this process earlier this summer with agency engagement and then a call for projects in July. We did utilize the funding round working group, particularly the staff one, to talk about this a little bit in terms of what we were looking for and how the process would play out. So that was a really valuable part of getting some good feedback and insight from partners there. So our methodology was based on the same methodology that was used in spring and focused on elements that support regional serving projects that are competitive for the program in which they're seeking funding from, and also for the construction projects readiness. So are they environmentally clear? Do they have significant funding investments already that they can leverage that will get them closer to the ability to start construction? So after going through that process and receiving a good number of applications from our partners, we have 7 projects that we've recommended to be prioritized on the construction category, and you can see them here, spanning a lot of different programs, including bridges, Safe Streets for All, Protect, Rural Program, RAISE, MEGA, and a federal active transportation program. That's the ATIIP program. For our project development category, there's 6 projects that are recommended here. So these are things that are either going to be applying this year or the following year for funding that we felt were significant enough for us to provide some support to them and put them on the prioritization list. So again, Safe Streets for All, we've got some transit on there, a RAISE project for the Truxell Bridge project, another rural, a mega application, and then a rail crossing project as well. And for our state programs, we are looking to nominate the Placer-Sacramento Gateway Project, which is a bundle of projects along the 80 corridor, as well as, and that's for Solutions for Congested Corridors, and as well as the Grant Line Road Project for the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. This would fill a funding gap to allow that to start construction. So very supportive of that and leveraging that $25 million raise grant that was awarded earlier this year. So the next steps for this program would be we're going to coordinate with all of the folks that are on these lists to come up with individualized technical assistance and support plans for them. We recognize that everybody's needs are going to be different in terms of what they want to get out of this. It might just be going to DC and talking, at cap to cap, but there might need to be grant technical assistance. We might need to have other conversations with our lobbyists to really help them with strategy. So these are all things that we're going to start to talk about with partners and understand how we can really support them. That's one of the really important things of being on this list. You're not just on a list, you're actually getting something from SACOG for that. So we also are going to ensure that these are included in papers and talking points for Cap to Cap in 2025. Seeing how well it went last year, we want to continue with that. So our recommendation today is multifaceted. So sorry for all the text, but it is basically to approve the staff recommended list of projects, nominate the Grant Line Road project for the TSEP program, and then nominate the Placer Sacramento Gateway project for solutions for congested corridor, but also authorize SACOG to be a co-applicant. That is a common practice. It's something we've done in the past, and it really helps with the competitiveness of the program. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Christina. Questions, comments? Yes, Director Guerra.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First, I want to thank for the update to the project development projects. And back in March, Supervisor Kennedy and I had brought this issue up because we had been meeting with our federal partners, particularly on some of our major projects that weren't listed in this. And I think going to, when we go meet with advocacy, it's important that they also see us planning ahead. So a couple points here. One, very delighted on the Stockton Boulevard multimodal BRT included in that aspect, and also on the Farm to Forks route as well. It's been a conversation for us on the STA and making sure that we're looking at that when we're meeting with our federal partners. And obviously, one of the priorities that we've done at the City of Sacramento, given the fatalities in our future discussion here, is on the Vision Zero aspect of it. And I think we need to be giving a heads up on for our federal partners on that aspect. So I'm glad that that is actually part of it for this time around, and then the papers are going to include that. I just wanted to highlight again some of the regional projects here, particularly the I Street Bridge replacement. This is one that very proud to be working with our partners in West Sacramento, a regional project that's going to link not only our communities that are work and live in each other's district, but if things go well with the A's moving over, and as we also move forward with both of our agriculture tourism that's happening in both counties, that piece is going to be such a significant piece between our regional efforts to both promote our tourism and in the different aspects, whether they're in the central cities or in the agricultural routes. So with that, when appropriate, I'll move the item. But glad to see that from our conversation in March that we've included the project development components so that we can be forward planning when we're meeting with our federal partners.
Thank you, Director, and thanks for the context as well. I think it's always helpful for the board to hear a little bit more about the specificities of some of these, so appreciate that. Other comments? Yes, Director Hume.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to kind of echo some of the comments of my colleague from Sacramento there relative to the prioritized projects. Particularly happy to see the Camera Road extension and obviously Grant Line Road to take advantage of the federal infusion of money. But more importantly than that, I wanted to recognize the willingness and generosity of staff in including some critical projects for Sacramento County that were kind of hill to die on inclusions. And as I said at the Lunar Committee meeting, the inner child in me wants to definitely put everything in the pot, but that doesn't always make for a better soup. And so I showed some restraint, recognize we can't do it all, but I do want to appreciate the inclusion. I think of those 2 or 3 projects that needed to be in there.
Thank you, Director Baines.
Yeah, I just want to let you know Sutter County supports the development of this program and its list of regional projects to benefit our many agencies. So in the future, we plan to submit projects for funding consideration in conjunction with our anticipated development in the southern region or southern part of Sutter County. So thank you.
Thank you, Director. Director Bradford.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank staff and fellow board members for this effort and also echo the importance of going through this exercise. As mentioned at Cap to Cap, it's very well received when we as a region say these are our highest priorities. And I will also say that as a member of the Mega Region Working Group, we've done a similar activity there with our colleagues at MTC and SACOG. We have 12 Mega Region projects that really provide enhanced connectivity of goods and people across the mega region. And when we do our state legislative advocacy day and we meet with our state legislators and state transportation related departments, they're all very, very excited to see that we as a mega region have come together and are able to say these are our priorities. And so I think there's extreme value in doing this. And so,
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Thomas.
I don't mean to steal your thunder, Chair
No,
Saragosa.
no, I was gonna, yeah.
But I just want to thank staff for including the trip to green in this project prioritization. As for those of you that were generous enough to come up to El Dorado County at last month's board meeting, you had an opportunity to see this innovative project and that it's a game changer for the way that we can maybe tackle really difficult transportation problems in a very efficient way. So this funding and this prioritization will allow us to perhaps be a model across the nation for how to employ creative solutions to difficult challenges. So this will be a game changer for us and really appreciate, actually for the region. So thank you for that.
Couldn't have said it better. Absolutely. I mean, we go from, a $700 million flyover or underground, in order to alleviate those 3 stoplights through El Dorado County and Placerville to a $16 million solution. And so I just want to thank everyone that's worked on that as well. But yes, I mean, this is a game changer for our area, for the region. So we thank you for including it in this round. Yes, Director.
Thank you. Well, the same. I want to thank you to the Transportation Committee in particular. I think it's the most challenging thing you have to do is taking this list and turning it into this. And there'll be people happy and people not happy. But and honestly, I think our tours have helped us so much in that process too. Yeah, I go to Apple Hill, so I kind of knew. I hadn't been to Yuba City really much. This has really helped us get that visual to see what we're dealing with. In particular for Placer County and for Rockland, addressing 65 is really critical for us as we're trying to get businesses into our areas. The massive growth, it's bad now. It's going to be unbelievable. And that really is a challenge because people need to move their goods and services. Our safety response times we're noticing. And with the development of all these apps to give you a shortcut through, I will tell you that in particular for Rockland, Sunset and Midas, which are Midas is a neighborhood street, is an absolute nightmare. When 65 is bad, this is where they go. And we do track and see it's the cut through, and it's how I'd get to Lincoln too. I can't blame anybody cutting through. So it's really crucial for us and really, really appreciate the support to help us address.
Thank you, Director. Other comments? Thank you.
Second.
Vice Chair, do you want to make comment beforehand?
Sure, thank you, Chair. Just
particularly for the forming of the funding round subcommittee, I think that work that staff did, what you see here is probably the least just proposal I've ever seen, on the board. It's everybody's fighting for the jurisdictions and see this.
Well said. So we'll go ahead. We have a first and a second, but before we go to a vote, we'll open it up for public comment. I know I have at least one, Dan Allison.
And Chair Saragosa, we do have a comment online too when you're ready for that one.
Great.
Good morning, Board.
morning.
Dan Allison, and I'm not representing any organizations on this item this morning, just myself. I see that the SB1 TCEP is recommending Grant Line Road as part of the Capital Southeast Corridor project, and I object to that. It's a GHG and VMT inducing project, and if I look at the table in attachment 1, it gets a 5.9 on reducing GHG and VMT. That's impossible. It's just, that's ridiculous that it could get that score on that item. And I think the project should not go forward. I think SACOG should not be supporting it. And it's not required that they recommend to the state that that project be funded. So it should just be dropped. I'll also point out that the table in the staff report and the table in attachment A don't match up. There's different projects on each. There's something amiss there. I'm not saying any particular project should or shouldn't be there. It's just the tables are not the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Do we have any other comments from the public in attendance? All right, we'll go to online comments.
Thank you. Our commenter is Susan Harry. Susan, you're in the room and can speak when you're ready. Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would like to suggest that the Green Means Go program, the first tranche, as we have heard SACOG say, for 400 million be put forth for federal funding. And be a real subject of discussion in the next April Cap to Cap. Green Means Go has been talked about as the single most important action that our region can take to meet goals for infill development, for housing, for anti-sprawl, for lowering VMT and greenhouse gas emissions. And it's a perfect candidate for federal funding under HUD, EPA, or DOT. And it really is a regional program. 26 of the 28 jurisdictions have put forth green zone plans. And so there's a recognition of the benefit that the funding of infrastructure could do through the Green Means Go program. So I would like you to consider that as part of your regional priorities at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Do we have any other? Seeing none.
There's no other public comment.
All right, thank you, Lynette. Okay, so we have a first and a second. Do we have any other comments from board members or questions before I call for roll call? Seeing none. Any comments from staff? No. All right. Can we have roll call, please?
Thank you, Director Baines.
Aye.
Bradford.
Aye.
Branscombe.
Aye.
Boulahan.
Aye.
Chapman. Absent Desmond, absent Dowden Calvillo, absent Frost. Gallardo.
Aye.
Gog.
Yes.
Guerrero. Director Guerrero is currently absent. Boomgarden for Harris.
Yes.
Howdesheld absent. Hume.
Aye.
Jennings.
Yes.
Joyner.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Nisley.
Yes.
Kozlowski.
Yes, yes, yes.
Lauren.
Yes.
Papanow for Lozano. McCully. Sander absent. Schaefer. Director Schaefer is absent. Teeter. Thomas.
Aye.
Guerra for Ving. Vega. Villegas. Vice Chair Soon.
Aye.
And Chair Zaragoza.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate Director Kozlowski's wall of sound as well on his. All right, well, now we will actually go to item 8, which is our workshop, our next item on the agenda. Dangerous by Design, and Christina again will be highlighting this one for us along with James. And so I will kick it back off to Christina and then James for any comments as well.
All right, I promise this is the last time you'll see me today. So the Sacramento metro area, which is the Sacramento, Roseville, Folsom area, was recently ranked 20th in the most dangerous places for pedestrians in the United States. Today's workshop will focus on this metric and others as we hear from Heidi Simon, the Director of Thriving Communities at Smart Growth America, and one of the authors of Dangerous by Design, a report that shares findings on pedestrian fatality safety data from around the United States. We'll also hear from Kiara Reed and David Moore from Civic Thread, who are going to share examples from the Sacramento area of community co-created solutions to dangerous roadways. Safety affects everyone, but as Dangerous by Design report notes, there are some specific demographic disparities that need to be considered when planning for transportation projects. It's often the most vulnerable people that are affected by these disparities, namely people who don't either have access to a motorized vehicle or can't drive for various reasons. The report is timely and important because agencies all over our region regularly compete for state, federal, and regional grants to implement active transportation projects and plans. Our speakers will share some interim solutions that address the safety disparities on our roadways and will help make our region's streets safer for pedestrians of all ages and abilities. I'm going to turn it over to James.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. This is a really important workshop this morning. When we started our work on racial equity back in 2020, many of you at that point said, we want to see data. We want to see numbers. We want to understand disparities and where they exist. Interestingly, in transportation, I would say we haven't been great in data, and we're going to have a board workshop next month actually that actually rolls out our new dashboard, our new regional dashboard on all kinds of metrics and all the data that we can get. One of the places in transportation that there has been data for quite some time is around fatalities and injuries and the safety issue. And one of the places we see stark disparities by race, ethnicity, by income, by age, by location is around unsafe streets and pedestrian safety. So, and the data is, it is troubling. The trends are going in all the wrong directions. And I think we're going to hear a little bit about that this morning. We're delighted that we have Heidi Simon from Smart Growth America, one of the authors of the report, Dangerous by Design. I want to, though, connect it because while you're going to see, and you probably know in your own communities, or if you've been reading the papers, that these trends are going in the wrong direction, there are things that we can do. There are things that we can do about this. Many of you lament the fact that transportation projects take 5, 10, 20 years to build, but there's a new approach called quick build, and we're going to hear a little bit about that this morning. What can we do quickly to actually do interventions in streets that could slow down traffic, make streets safer? So that's coming up, and then you just approved the funding round framework, right? And I had a discussion with one of you yesterday in advance of this, saying, well, how does this connect? Why are we doing the workshop now? Well, you just approved a funding round framework, and all of your communities and all of your public works directors and all of your staff are going to be thinking about what projects to put forward in the next 12 to 18 months. And I will submit to you that there are many, many kinds of safety, either quick build or complete streets or projects and streets, frankly, right now that are crying out for these kinds of safety measures and these interventions. And the last thing I'd just say as we kick it off and hand it over to Heidi Simon, again, one of the report authors is going to give you that national look in this Dangerous by Design report. The other piece of data we love to have from you is your feedback. So in front of you is a survey. This is part of our Racial Equity Action Plan. We're always looking for, you tell us, are these helpful workshops? Is the information today going to give you a little bit of a better understanding of why we are trying to tackle these disparities through our Racial Equity Action Plan? So please fill it out. I mean, wait for the workshop, wait for the speakers. Please engage and ask questions. We've got some time this morning. So fill out the survey, and without further ado, I think I'm handing it over to Heidi.
Good morning,
Welcome,
Heidi.
Morning. Thank you for having me. I'm going to toss some slides up if I can get some kind of confirmation that you can see them.
We can.
Perfect. Thank you for having me and for bringing this important topic to your group today. I think it was well set up as why we are discussing pedestrian safety and the disparities that exist within it. And I hope it furthers your own discussions and informs the work that you're doing. My name is Heidi Simon. I'm the director of Thriving Communities at an organization called Smart Growth America, which is a national nonprofit that works to support communities to create places that are healthy, prosperous, and resilient. And we do that through technical assistance, thought leadership, and advocacy to achieve our vision of livable places, healthy people, and shared prosperity. Really what it boils down to is that we want people, no matter where they live or who they are or where they come from, to be able to be the best versions of themselves and to enjoy the communities that they call home. I'm going to talk about two things today primarily. One, speak to the Dangerous by Design report that was mentioned in the introduction, give a little bit of a high level look at what we saw when we released the report over the summer, just a few months ago now. So the data is as recent as we can get from USDOT. And I can get links and everything out to the group after the fact for those who want to dig in more. And then I'm going to turn to the solutions. It is not enough to talk about the problem on our streets. There is good work being done in communities across the U.S. It is hard work, but it is very much necessary. We need more of it. And we need leadership and commitment and resources to support that work. So I hope you will consider some of the strategies that I will be talking about here today. So our streets are dangerous by design. And what do we mean by that? Why do we have that as the title of our report? And really what it boils down to is what you see on your screen here. Far too many people, whether they are walking, biking, trying to access transit, are put in environments that are not designed with them in mind. They're designed to primarily move cars as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Oftentimes at the cost of the safety and accessibility of those outside vehicles. I would argue that for those inside a vehicle, whether you are driving or a passenger, these environments are not enjoyable for you either. Having to go through stressful situations with multiple points of conflict, really no one is living their best lives in the transportation systems that we have today. And the numbers bear this out. So all the numbers and information that I'm sharing with you today come from our 2024 release of Dangerous by Design. Dangerous by Design does a number of things as it looks at pedestrian safety data. The data comes from USDOT, from the FAR system. The most recent data is from 2022. That's the most recent complete data that we have on pedestrian fatalities. I am happy to do a whole other separate presentation on what that delay of data means for advocates and practitioners. But it is, a 1.5 to 2 year gap at this point to get data. So what do we see in terms of pedestrian fatalities? We are seeing a historic climb of deaths on our roadways across the U.S., a 75% increase in pedestrian fatalities since 2010, which erases any progress that we were making prior to that. And as you can see, the numbers continue to grow quite drastically, and just continue to traumatize communities and individuals. As was mentioned, the burden of traffic violence is not felt equally across all demographics or all communities. The Dangerous by Design report looks at several demographics, what we call vulnerable populations. So looking at race, age, and income to see who is dying on our streets. The first one is race. So you will see here that Black or African Americans and American Indians and Alaskan Natives are dying at higher rates than their white counterparts. I will also share that while all the rates increased from our previous report, the amount of increase for Black or African American communities and American Indian and Alaskan Natives was greater than the other races. So not only are they dying more, but they are dying faster in our communities. And your level of risk when it comes to walking is directly related to your income. So for those who are lower income communities, you have far, far, far higher rates of pedestrian fatalities. And that number just continues to go down as income rates go up. We also know that age is a factor in pedestrian fatalities, although not as drastically as we see with race and income. But adults between age 50 and 64 are the most likely to be killed while walking. There can be a number of factors attributed to that. This is the age bracket that primarily people are either transitioning out of using a vehicle for any number of reasons and might be forced into navigating environments on foot that are designed for cars primarily. But there is fluctuation among age as well. Some of the trends that we look at nationally. So the report kind of slices the data in a number of ways. We look at the entire national rate of pedestrian fatalities. We look at MSAs and ranks those. We rank states, and then we also rank congressional districts. Some of the national trends that we are seeing is that everywhere that is ranked is essentially getting more dangerous. So I like to say that if you think of the rankings, you know, being a block like this, everything kind of jumped up. Most of the rankings didn't change all that much. You know, if you were near or in the top 20 when we did the report before, you're probably nearer in the top 20 in this report. Florida is noteworthy in that it has 8 of the most deadly 20 MSA areas out of the 101 that we look at. We know the types of roads that are killing people. Across the US, about 2/3 of all pedestrian fatalities occur on state-owned facilities, so not facilities that are able to be controlled or changed easily by local communities. There are several places that are getting safer and that are making gains in pedestrian safety. They are nominal at best. And those places were already making gains when we released the report in 2022. And finally, we know that urban areas are seeing a higher rise in pedestrian fatalities since 2013 than rural communities. Pedestrian deaths are up 61% versus 41% in rural communities. Digging in a little bit now to the Sacramento area in California more broadly, wanting to give insights for all of you for the work that you are doing to make improvements in your own communities and the region. California is number 8 among the most deadliest states of the data that we look at. We study a 5-year period, so this covers 2018 through 2022. You'll see a map of the most 20 dangerous states on the screen. The darker red is the top 10, the lighter red is the 11 through 20. 26% of all traffic fatalities in that time period were pedestrian fatalities, so just over a quarter. And a third of those pedestrian fatalities occurred on state-owned roads, which means that that is actually quite lower than the national average. And as was mentioned in the introduction, the Sacramento MSA does rank 20th as of the most dangerous places to walk. In the 5-year period that was studied, 139 additional people were killed in that 5-year period versus the 5-year period previously, which means that 61% of all pedestrian fatalities in the last decade in the Sacramento area have occurred in the last 5 years. So what do we do about this? I said, you know, there is a number of places that are doing hard work and being really intentional about this. And it comes down to the fact that we know what is killing people as they are walking, biking, and taking transit. We know the conditions that need to be changed, and we know where they are happening. Ultimately, most of the fatalities gets down to a single critical factor, which is speed. It's a physics equation. Something that is traveling at a higher speed, if it hits a person walking or biking, is going to have a greater chance of killing them if they are operating a vehicle at a slower speed. I will also point out that the graphic on the screen here is from 2017, which is the most recent data that we have on this issue. Something that has been happening with greater frequency since 2017 is that our vehicle fleet has gotten bigger and heavier, which means that probably the damage being done on our streets is much worse than these numbers. Because we know, again, it's that physics equation. Something that is heavier when it hits an unprotected individual is going to do more damage. We focus on road design, you know, I said at the beginning, because it is the single most important thing that we can do to create safer environments for people walking. Design can be more influential on driver behavior than setting speed limits, than enforcement, than any number of things, because it creates situations where the safe choice becomes the easy choice, the intuitive voice. It relays information to the driver and other roadway users to behave in a certain way. So you can look at a street like this, which is in Memphis, Tennessee, the most dangerous place for people walking in our most recent report. And 60% of all the pedestrian fatalities in 2020 occurred on streets that look similar to this. It's a non-interstate arterial highway, so it's a highway that is doing business as a main street, which never results in anything good. You'll see here that there are a number of lanes. It's very wide across, which increases the amount of time someone has to spend crossing the street. It also has few crosswalks or stops, which means that drivers are able to get up to speed and maintain that speed. It also encourages mid-block crossings. So people crossing not at a signalized cross stop, because signalized crosswalks are located almost half a mile apart from one another, which would require someone adding, 10 minutes or more to their trip to get to a signalized crosswalk. You will also notice that sidewalks, while they are present, are intersected by a lot of driveways, which add on to those conflict points or risk exposure, and really just kind of an afterthought to this environment. Intersections, unsurprisingly, are one of the most dangerous places to be if you are someone walking as you try to engage with the environment. Things like rounded corners that encourage high speeds during turns can be a factor, as well as increasing distances between those corners. Not maintaining crosswalks. So something as simple as keeping something, painted, making sure light bulbs are not burnt out, things like that is important, and making sure that obstructions or visibility for people driving is clear, and that's called daylighting. So we know where people are killed. One of the things that we do with our Dangerous by Design report is we actually map all pedestrian fatalities. So you can go on our website right now, type in a zip code or a city, and it will show you all the pedestrian fatalities that have occurred in that space. And you can zoom in, zoom out as you like. One of the things that I try to do when I do presentations like this is find local examples of where pedestrian fatalities are taking place in contexts that you might be familiar with to help illustrate some of this. One of the things that becomes clear if you spend some time with the map is these pedestrian fatalities are happening in the same places. We know which roads are dangerous. I just got an email this morning that one of the areas that we are studying and working on in Albuquerque, which is the second most dangerous place to walk, has seen 34 pedestrian deaths this year. So, the first 9-10 months of the year, they have seen 34 people die on a 3-mile stretch of road. So we know where changes need to happen. When you look at areas like this one in Yuba City, you can see why fatalities might be taking place. So here you can see, curbs being far apart from one another, which means that people have to cross long distances to get to the other corner safely. Crosswalks are lined, but they are not striped, ladder style. And there is some confusing or maybe not intuitive turn lanes that would require navigation both by drivers and people walking to know where and when people are stopping and going, which way to be looking in terms of oncoming traffic and pedestrian traffic. The same can be said for this neighborhood in the area. So you can see what is essentially the top of my slide. The cluster of fatalities along that road is the road that we will be looking at here. Similarly, you can see you know, the striped crosswalks, but not ladder style. You see a painted bike lane, but not with physical barriers. So I hesitate to call it a protected bike lane. Lots of turning activities for vehicles, which not only the drivers have to navigate and have visibility of, but also pedestrians. And really what the question comes down to is, who are we designing for? And for decades, it has been that we have been designing for cars. And our funding and our resources and our engineering and our plans have all gone to that point to get cars to where they need and want to go as quickly as possible, and at the cost of the lives and accessibility of people outside of vehicles. One of the things that we advocate for at Smart Growth America and that we encourage communities to consider doing is what's called a quick build demonstration. It allows communities to deploy safety interventions or accessibility interventions, depending on what priorities might be needed, through temporary street design changes. So these are projects that are not intended to be permanent. They're intended to test out materials, test out designs, engage the public, but do so in a temporary fashion that hopefully will inform a permanent project, but also maybe serve as a stopgap measure as, you know, funding or permitting or whatever is approved for that long-term permanent change. We know quick builds work. We have done dozens of these at Smart Growth America, and there are tons of them being done across the US, and they work, they get results. So on the left here, you see an example of a quick build demonstration from South Bend, Indiana. That saw the percentage of people driving 25 miles per hour or less increase as they tested out different designs, a traffic circle, a bump out, a chicane, and a mini traffic circle. And on the right-hand side of your screen, you will see the results of a quick build demonstration in Waterbury, Connecticut. They saw an 11% drop of speeds along a main street corridor, a state-owned facility, during the project period. And the way that we know that it was the project that was doing the speed reduction is that when they took the project out, they had a limited permit from the state. When they took the project out, the speeds went back up. The only thing that changed was you know, rain barrels in the street, and a little bit of paint tape.
Okay,
Quick builds are also,
Heidi,
yes.
real fast, if you go back just one, because it may just be me, but what's a chicane? I understand the other three, but I'm not familiar with that term.
Yeah. Yeah, no, happy to. The easiest way for me to describe it is it creates a zigzag almost. It reduces the width of a street at different cadences on either side.
Thank you. Gotcha. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Of course. And I might have a picture of one, and if not, we definitely have stuff online that I can get you. Quick builds also are a great opportunity to change the way transportation is done. You know, one of the things that I think we see in the numbers is the result of the fact that transportation decisions oftentimes are not informed by the people who are using the streets. They are designed and engineered in a way that does not allow for genuine public input and feedback, where a quick build does. The entire process of length of a quick build will incorporate, if it's done well, will incorporate opportunities for public comment and feedback. It will engage community members in the design and the process and the follow-up. It can proactively address potential pushback. So if you know someone in your community who maybe is against protected bike lanes, if a temporary bike lane goes in and they get to experience it, or they get to see their son or daughter ride their bike in the street for the first time on the way to school and be safe and have fun with it, that can change minds much faster than any presentation or public meeting can. So it's a really great way to engage the community on some of these topics. We have done, as I said, a number of quick builds. I pulled two just quickly to kind of highlight some of the things that can be done with a quick build. The first is in Wenatchee, Washington, and we actually have a video of this one, which is pretty cool. The budget was less than $10,000. These do not have to be overcomplicated or incredibly expensive things in order to make change. What they did was they reduced conflict points, so they put in essentially a temporary median to help shorten distance and provide a place for people walking and biking to stand if they're not able to cross in the full time of the crosswalks. That also reduced car speeds, and they extended a bike lane to connect to bike lane networks so that people didn't have to kind of hop off a protected bike lane network to get to where they need to go. They also did a really great job with repeated community engagement. They were very intentional in reaching the Spanish-speaking population in Wenatchee, who had been overlooked and kind of kept out, either unintentionally, but just not engaged in getting their voices heard. Flexible project design, they actually restriped their project mid-project when they saw something that needed to be changed, and were able to pivot because they really wanted to focus on that end goal of improving access and reducing the speeds and the conflict points. And they didn't care how they got there. They kind of had an idea, but they used the project to help figure out the exact way to get there. The next I want to share is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This was a little more expensive. It was just over $23,000. They wanted to improve crossings around school. And so they knew that the kids were either walking to school and having to navigate an unsafe crossing, or kids just weren't walking to school because it wasn't safe and they were having to be driven to school when the school, distance-wise was accessible. So they looked at things like you see on the screen here, creating temporary pedestrian refuge islands. And they also included a signalized left turn lane, which allowed them then to change out the signal timings on a lighted crosswalk. They really leveraged that lived experience of the kids. So people who you would probably not see testify at a public comment meeting, but who have that lived experience and can tell you exactly where and how something does not feel safe. They looked at implementing multimodal solutions, so not only changing the behavior of the people walking, but also changing the behavior of the people driving, so that turn signal, and really pulling a lot of their solutions from FHWA guidance. FHWA has proven safety countermeasures that can be adapted or implemented as quick build demonstrations, so you do not have to recreate the wheel in order to get some of these done. Thanks again for having me today. I happy to take questions or stick around for discussion. But hopefully this gives you some insights as to things you can do to help turn the tide on pedestrian fatalities.
Thank you, Heidi. So just from a process down, are we going to go do questions, or are we going to go to our next?
If you wanted, I mean, it's up to you. If you want to do a few questions now, obviously we have our local group civic thread and kind of talking about what locally can you do, right? Like I see a lot of you taking notes on this. These quick builds are, I think, really intriguing. Do you want to take a few comments now or questions?
Yeah, maybe before it gets out of, So we'll go ahead and open it up. Yes, Director Villegas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe it's going to get addressed with what locally can happen, but I guess I would want to know, are there kind of any immediate, obvious, natural impediments to us doing exactly what we just saw? Because I can already kind of think about, obviously, it's a little more expensive in California than what was probably shown there in Pennsylvania, but I do want to know whether or not there's sort of non-starters in us being able to think about how to do some of these right out of the gate.
I think a great comment to pull through to the next presentation and keep going on that. Yes.
Yes.
Heidi, I'm wondering, on all those stats that you have, do you also track how many of those fatalities happened either in a crosswalk, or if it wasn't, how close they were to one?
So pedestrian fatality data has a number of issues with it. There is information on that. It varies greatly state by state. because crash data relies on police reporting and how that is collected. So there are trends. We don't dive into that because we feel that it is either undercounted or miscounted. But I can get you the kind of general understood numbers of that.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I think that's really something important to know is if those are happening in crosswalks, then is it that we need to improve the crosswalks or we need more of them? Because that's two different things to address, I think. So it would be
Yeah,
helpful to know.
it tips slightly into the mid-block crossings. You know, anytime I think that you have a crosswalk, you are at least signaling to a driver to pay attention or something different's going to happen to the environment. So they're just naturally a little bit safer. But not every crosswalk is created equally. And I would encourage you as well to look at the way that crash reporting is done in the Sacramento area, because there's likely ways to improve the information that you are getting as a community as well.
Director Joyner.
Hi, Heidi. Quick question for you, and I realize there's only probably about a year's worth of data on this, so you may not have it yet. I'm wondering about the impacts of AB 2147, the Freedom to Walk Act here in California that effectively legalized jaywalking. Have you seen any data on that and whether that has helped or harmed these stats?
So I'm not familiar with that specific piece of legislation. I can say that criminalizing jaywalking does not have known safety benefits to it. It does not change behavior in the way that changing the built environment does. And it oftentimes penalizes those who are our most vulnerable residents and who are navigating the environment by foot for reasons outside of their control.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just a quick thing. One of the statistics that was provided was the likelihood of being involved in a pedestrian accident based on income. And I think that's probably a straightforward statistic to generate, but maybe income is actually standing in for the amount of time you find yourself as a pedestrian. And it would be interesting if you could be more granular about that, because you know, we had a terrible, tragic pedestrian accident in Folsom once several years ago. And it was somebody who regularly crossed at the same spot every morning to get to her job and just happened to do it one too many times and found somebody looking down at their phone that ended up hitting her at an unsafe speed. So the time spent as a pedestrian is actually the stat that would be more useful. And obviously there are some environmental impacts. You know, the neighborhood you live in might be constructed in a way. And then just anecdotally, having grown up inside the city of Chicago, short blocks and lots of congestion actually make it a lot easier to cross everywhere. So I fear no street when everybody's moving slowly. Thank you.
Yeah, we like to say that we are not solving for congestion when we talk about the types of solutions that we are providing. We are solving for safety and we are solving for accessibility. But when you talk about thriving communities, whether that be safe mobility, accessible mobility, economic vibrancy, you want people. Congestion is a sign of people. It's getting those people to navigate those environments in a way that works for everybody.
Vice Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Heidi. I was wondering if you could dive into the statistic as it dealt with race, that there's such a high disparity of Native American and Alaskan, and as a population, percentage of the general population, they're so much smaller. So I'm curious if there's anything insights in that.
Yeah, so really what drives that is when you look at the type of investment in constructions that are taking place in tribal areas or communities where these populations live. So for example, a lot of federal lands are places where you might find Native American and Alaskan natives. are traversed by multi-lane state-owned arterials and highways with not a lot of thought given to people walking or biking. Despite that, there are people walking and biking in those environments, either for transportation or recreation, and so they are exposed to that risk. Tribal communities have also historically been left out of funding, investment, input into the types of transportation solutions that are needed for their communities. And we're seeing the results of all that decision making.
Thank you.
Heidi, I completely agree that route design is of prime importance. Do you have any data on driver behavior, particularly cell phones have been with us now for about 40 years, and certainly in the last 20, it's ramped up to where if you don't have one, you really stick out. Now, in driving along, I will notice at least, I'm guessing about 10% of the drivers are playing with their phone, head in the screen. And as we were maneuvering our way into Sacramento this morning, I was passenger and I'm observing, and clearly at least 10% are distracted. Do you have any data on the impact of distracted drivers on these pedestrian deaths?
Distraction continues to be a major concern in pedestrian fatalities and in all roadway fatalities, really. But there are changes to the built environment that can encourage drivers to pay attention. Cues from the environment that there is other activity outside the vehicle that they need to be paying attention to, things like that. One of the things I like to point out when the issue of cell phones and distraction comes up is cell phones exist everywhere across the world. The US is an outlier globally in what we are seeing in traffic fatalities. In any other developed nation, traffic fatalities are decreasing at a rapid pace. We are one of the few countries that are seeing an increase like this. And it is because of we don't have the same road design or changes, making the same changes to the road design.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. In the jurisdictions that you said that there were marginal gains and reductions of fatalities, were there particular policy changes that you've been able to attribute to those?
Yeah, a number of places have really intentionally put funding behind things that are known to reduce speeds and increase investment in active transportation, whether it's through something like a complete streets policy, a Vision Zero policy, some kind of action plan that allows funding, more rapid deployment of those funds to meet the community needs. And I think for a number of them, just being really intentional about making changes at every opportunity. So for example, it doesn't require a big capital project to make changes to a street design. If you're out there restriping something and you can also repaint a crosswalk, do it. If you are out there making sure that a curb is completed and you can, improve the curb cut or make sure that the sidewalk isn't cracked, do it. Don't wait for major projects to make safety improvements that need to take place. It needs to be it needs to be an everyday thing.
Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and we have more time afterwards. We'll go back to questions for Heidi, but I want to go ahead and welcome our next presenters as well. So Kiara Reed, as well as David, also with us. So David's here as well. So welcome both. Good morning, and we'll hand it back off to you.
Thank you. My name is Kiara Reed. I'm the Executive Director of Civic Thread. You may know us by our previous name, Walk Sacramento, and I'm joined by my colleague, David Moore, who's our Community Planning Specialist. A little history about us. Civic Thread, formerly Walk Sacramento, has inspired, implemented, and advocated for health equity in the built environment for the past 20 years. We do that through systems change in land use, community-based planning, and people-centered policy. Here's an overview of some of the projects that we've worked on regionally. We lean on 20 years of experience co-creating creative, robust, and successful community-led solutions in disadvantaged and underrepresented communities, really with the goal of advancing transportation equity and mobility justice. We've led Safe Routes to School programs in Yuba County, Sacramento County, Yolo County. We're currently working with SACOG on the Mobility Zones project. We just wrapped up with Valley Vision on leading community engagement for the California Jobs First effort in Yuba, Yolo, Sacramento, and Sutter counties. In our work, we center the lived experiences of residents who have limited or no access to an automobile, who have been disproportionately harmed or disconnected from the transportation system, people who are struggling to make ends meet and can't safely access schools, parks, routes to jobs, or any healthy food options. And that's why we're here. We provide the local context to a lot of the transportation issues that we face as a region. We believe that systems, planning, and bureaucratic processes need to change in order for us to achieve transportation equity, and that we must apply a mobility justice lens because a multimodal transportation system is not the only factor in encouraging the use of active transportation. BIPOC, low-income people, seniors, and youth are disproportionately harmed by the transportation system. We know that in Sacramento, folks that are Black are more likely to die on our streets and more likely to be harmed through regular traffic stops through police officers. There have been projects that have made strides towards transportation equity across the region, but we still have some very severe and critical challenges to pedestrian safety. Realizing safe, low maintenance, and climate resilient streets is still really far away from our reality. People that are dying or are seriously injured today are in part due to the decisions that were made decades ago. Engineers are prescribed to prioritize the efficient movement of vehicles over people, over human lives. Even where flexibility exists, vehicular prioritization persists due to the ingrained culture of how we plan for transportation. We need to change the process to prioritize safety, to prioritize street design, and to prioritize being responsive with things like quick builds. The decisions around transportation and policy and funding that you all are making today are going to impact our future youth. They're going to impact the tomorrow of this region. And this is urgent. We needed to embed equity and we needed to embed these quick build solutions ages ago. And if we don't do it now, we're going to still have the same problems in the future. Policy should guide equitable funding and investment. It should support infrastructure with things like complete streets, with things like improved road design, and with things like responsive quick builds where fatalities are occurring. We also need to be able to measure our outcomes with equity and ensure that the outcomes that we're getting to are really what we set out to achieve. And that's part of the problem that we're seeing today, is that we have several planning processes, great planning processes across the region, and we've made strides towards equity, but those outcomes don't match. The policy, the funding, the political will, and most importantly, the outcomes aren't matching what we set out to do. And I'm going to hand it over to David, who's going to get through some of the local context of where we have made strides. But again, I just want to emphasize that we still have a very long way to go.
Sue, you had a question?
I was wondering if you could tell me what cultural imprint means, what cultural imprint looks like.
When we say cultural imprint, we're talking about the way that transportation design and transportation planning has gone for the past, 50 years, right? We've been ingrained in our system to design for the prioritization of cars, which means that we're thinking of people walking and biking as an afterthought. We're thinking of people who have other modes of transportation as an afterthought. We're not thinking of safety first. We're not thinking of pedestrians first.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, David.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. Thank you, Kiara. So I'm going to walk us through some case studies that really highlight the prioritization of equity and safety, not just in our urban environments, but in our suburban and our rural as well. You've heard equity. I'm going to continue to kind of elaborate on equity, and I just want to really emphasize that when we talk about equity, it really needs to be adapted to the community it's intended to affect change in, right? Oftentimes in the urban core, we think of racial equity, but we've touched on, right, that it is age, it is income, and to the point earlier made, income is in itself like a stand-in, right? It is representative of other things, just like race, just like age. Just because you have less financial security doesn't automatically make you more likely to die, right? It is the outcome of that, is the secondhand outcomes of those conditions. So When we talk about equity, it needs to be addressing the current disparities and the historical disparities within any given population to provide the proportional resources. And then on that one end, on the other end, we have safety, right, which is universal. It doesn't need to be adapted. We need to end traffic fatalities and serious injuries. And the way we do that, as we've heard, is reducing the speed of drivers and physically protecting pedestrians. So a couple of case studies that we're going to walk through. This is one in Marysville. This is a quick build solution. You can see kind of two elements of this. One was a roundabout done in the intersection there. Another one was kind of a protected bike lane. This is taken at a high injury location. We are, again, physically changing the environment with readily available, low cost, easy to install resources that is going to slow down drivers. As we've heard, driving or speed is a big issue, and it's going to physically protect pedestrians, right? We're not relying on signage. We're not relying on informing or educating drivers. Those are components, but we need to physically change the environment that we are in. Is this the desired outcome if we had unlimited resources? No, right? We'd want a more robust roundabout. We'd want maybe more robust physical protection for our pedestrians. But as we all are very familiar with, we don't have the resources to execute the implementations that we would like to see. So we use what we have and we address it in the high need areas.
May I make a quick comment?
Yeah.
Could you go back to that? The lower one is at the end of my street. It keeps more cars coming down my street. I got blamed on that because the mayor lives on that street. But both of those has significantly affected traffic through that neighborhood, which is a cut-through neighborhood between the state highways. And I'm encouraging people, don't be shy about employing these mechanisms. People will complain just because it's a change. Complaints happen, and I'd hear it all the time, and I'd just talk about protecting a neighborhood. And all of a sudden, after a little bit of time, the complaints evaporate and it's a safer place.
I wasn't sure if that was the direction that comment was going, but I'm happy to see that that was the outcome. I was building the defenses as you started, but yeah, happy to see that that was the outcome. Moving into some policy elements. This is the West Sacramento Sidewalk Transportation Equity Project, or STEP. And this is from the lens of policy, really looks at equity, not only from previous commitments from the Mobility Action Plan that the city had, the Mayor's Commission on Climate Change, but really actualized equity throughout the entire planning process of this project. So from the objectives, recognizing that equity needs to be a component. Giving equity and giving historically underserved communities empowerment within the process to make decisions. During this process, we looked at statewide best practices that involved equity and really picked and chose what was going to fit for this community, right? Again, this is not one size fits all. And then ultimately the prioritization framework, which I'm going to touch on in a little bit as well, really prioritizes equity, right? It's going to take that from start to finish. And in the end, moving equity forward really ensures that it's not a box that just gets checked through the process. Equity becomes invested in through the financial resources that later come. For the city of Sacramento, the Transportation Priorities Plan, again, if we all had the resources to take on every project that we need, that would be a wonderful world to live in, but it's not a reality. It will never be a reality. So we need to figure out how we're going to prioritize projects. For the city of Sacramento, racial equity was a core component, right? And they provided that within one of the key investment metrics that were used for how to prioritize all of their transportation projects, as well as safety, which you'll notice is not on here, is vehicle throughput, right? They did not consider the reduction in congestion as a critical component to prioritize. Couple of quick build examples, and I'll go through these because I think we're starting to get the point, but this is in the city of West Sacramento. This was originally just a 2-lane road. To the right there is a school, and there's an intersection crossing just ahead, but you can't see quite in the frame. But what they did was they didn't take away a lane. I think oftentimes when we think about quick build or we see kind of lanes being reallocated, it is just that. This is simply reallocating a lane. You still have a throughput, but now you have a dedicated turn lane so that it's easier to predict what vehicles are going to do as they're potentially engaging with the pedestrian area walking across the driveway there, right? We have striped painting for cyclists, Granted, we don't have, again, the physical protection we would like to see with more resources, but we do have a buffer zone, and there are some vertical, very small delineators in that buffer bike zone. We have some vertical delineators that keep people from driving through that turn lane. So we're seeing, again, these low-cost, easy-to-install solutions in a high-priority area near schools that are having effective outcomes on improving safety. Another example, this here is in Sacramento. So to the left there is Broadway Boulevard. That is a 4-lane arterial. Oftentimes a physical median is going down the middle, but this has a little bit of a cut through here. And if you, where those red boxes are, you can see where they put the physical delineators to keep vehicles from driving through there. There's a lot of conflict points because it's hard to anticipate for bicyclists, for pedestrians, for people driving, what is going on at this intersection. People want to cut through just to get to Broadway so they don't have to go left, wait at a light, and then go right again. So we just eliminate that throughput for vehicles. It's easy for them to understand. It's not costing them a lot, and it is incredibly safer for pedestrians and cyclists making their way through that intersection. And lastly, I just want to acknowledge, and Kiara touched on this, right? We are far from finished. We're just starting to kind of understand and implement the types of policies and the types of quick build solutions that we want to see. We know, and we'll take the city of Sacramento as a perfect example, we've had a Vision Zero plan that was enacted in 2018. Traffic fatalities have only gotten worse. Is that a problem with the policy? No, the policy is addressing a lot of the solutions we want to see. The problem is the allocation of funding and resources to implement that plan. So first, we need to have the policies that are going to actually affect change. We need to give them the resources through funding to allow those policies to be implemented. And ultimately, the foundation of all of that is political will, right? In part, you all sitting here, all of the leaders of our jurisdictions, having the political will to dedicate those financial resources, to dedicate the policies that are going to affect the change, to create a more equitable and safe environment for people getting from A to B. Thank you.
All right, thank you, David. All right, questions, comments? Well, actually, what I'm going to do now then, since I don't see any hands go right up, let's go ahead and open up public comments, and then we'll come back for further discussion. So we'll go, so Dan, Allison, you're back up.
Good morning, Dan Allison. I would first like to say that I have been working not for, but with Civic Thread for 13 and a half years now as a Safe Routes to School coordinator and as a transportation advocate, and they are an incredible community resource. They are advancing equity in a way that no other organization is, and pushing hard on those things and organizing people to move in the same direction. So I want to thank them. The reason that we're in this situation where our fatalities and severe injuries are increasing is because we have spent millions, billions of dollars on a road network that doesn't work for people. And now it's time to spend money on fixing those things. And there are projects in the regional priority list and elsewhere that do exactly that. But we really need to shift towards those kinds of projects to fix the mistakes we've made in the past. And there is no regional quick build funding. Some cities and the county are doing it on a small scale, and I'm very glad to see those, but it needs to be happening on a large scale and happening quickly. In response to every crash that happens, there should be some change made to the roadway to reduce or prevent that same type of crash from happening again. And that's going to require a lot of money. And the cities and the county in the region have some funds for that. They have squeezed funds out of other things to do some of those projects, but there really needs to be major funding for it. So I would like to see SACOG having, in addition to the million and tens of millions of dollars project, have a quick build program that is funded on a quick response sort of time frame so that we can get moving on those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Next is Vincenzo Carrasa from the City of Maryville. Welcome.
Right, thank you, Director Saragosa. I had a prepared statement, but from what Dan you mentioned, and also Heidi's comments, I thought came to my mind, and I want to throw kudos to a American Public Works Association project that we won Project of the Year, and it was the bridge. So I want to throw kudos out to Director Baines, Director Bradford, and Councilor Broomgarden. We worked with the joint project on the bridge, with the traffic calming project. It was a quick build, and we reduced speeds. I'm talking about speeds that kill by 11%. So with that, just quickly, that reminded me of that. But here's my prepared statement. So good morning, Board of Directors. My name is Vincenzo Carrazza, and I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Marysville. I was notified by SACOG staff that for the agenda item 8 today, that Civic Threads presentation has our case study for the Marysville's 14th Street traffic calming multimodal pilot project. I believe it's we're talking about the Transportation Equity Workshop. And I wanted to give a little bit of context to our efforts. As you've heard from Director Branscombe before, the city of Marysville is quad-sected. Let me repeat that, quad-sected by 2 state highways. Our West Marysville neighborhood is essentially an island. It's been surrounded under siege by tens of thousands of traffic per day. To top it off, the highway traffic that surround West Marysville neighborhood cut through their neighborhood to go between State Route 20 and State Route 70. So thanks to the SACOG's Mode Shift program, we were able to fund a pilot project, the Quick Build Traffic Calming project, where we essentially diverted traffic away from those residential zones back onto an industrial and commercial corridor. By lessening the highway traffic from the neighborhood streets, the residents now are able to walk and bike to the nearby park, that's Motor Park to the north, and the adjacent restaurants in the neighborhood and businesses to their south. So when we went through the slide, is that possible to bring back slide number 8 on there that the Civic Thread just did? Where David, you talked about it and our mayor commented a little bit about it. If we can bring that up, that'd be great. But yeah, go back to the 8th slide. It's the Marysville case study. I just wanted to comment on the 2 photos there. So the left photo is when we installed delineators on 14th and D. That's the street at the end of our mayor's house. It basically converted that to a right-in, right-out conversion. So all the highway cut-through traffic couldn't make that turn onto a residential street anymore. We pushed them onward onto the industrial and commercial road. And the second photo, did anybody zoom in there? Did you see where the little right chevron is? Those are actually 2 tractor tires stuck on top of each other. And that's what we use for our median roundabout. It's kind of reflective of our agricultural, theme or agricultural background, history of it. It was donated by some farmers. So we have a bunch of those too. So Blue Zones National picked it up, and they actually used that photo as an example of a quick build. So speaking of Blue Zones real quick, if you remember last year when I was standing up here, I had my compatriot Eric Paredes. He gave me this nice jacket, Blue Zones Project. He and I actually walked this neighborhood before we started the quick build, and we hand out notifications. Mayor, you got one at your house. Like door knocking, knocking on doors and presenting them with the project examples and notifications. We had a resident, and Eric stood there. I remember this. He talked to this person in Spanish for 30 minutes, and I'm like, I don't understand what's going on, but he really engaged this person. And when normally he wouldn't come to a public meeting and express his views, but they talked a lot about the project and the transportation issues. I thought that was a great example of a non-traditional public engagement, and it's a great example of transportation equity. So to top it off, just feel free if you want to reach out to me and we can help any of your agencies do quick builds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carrazzo, and I appreciate the context as well. So it was nice to have that local feel for all this as well, and to have your testimony on it. So I appreciate that. All right, any other public comments? Anything online?
There's no more public comment.
All right, thank you. All right, do we have any other comments from directors or questions? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate, the SACOG for putting together and having this presentation for our regional leaders here. And I think the point comes down because I was involved, and I want to also give thanks to our former council member, Steve Hansen, who was involved in pushing hard for the Vision Zero 2018 that changed the dynamics and thinking. And, I go back to my days as a college student at Sac State advocating for changes over on Folsom and 65th. And even through that time, I remember the arguments as an engineer, getting from other engineers, well, it has a level of service that would be reduced down to E or F. And when you look at that level of service, A means free flowing cars without impediment. And so we already gave these psychological grading marks to speed and movement over, people trying to get to the light rail station. So, I mean, I think the fact that we're shifting policy is important, but the biggest challenge has been funding. And I do agree that I think that going out of this as individual counties, when we go for transportation measures, we should be putting safety as a top priority. Air quality is mandated to us by the Federal Clean Air Act, so we're forced to do that. But safety needs to be a highlighted priority in that matter. And we know that those needs go hand in hand. We as a region are required to meet our attainment goals. But when we improve pedestrian and biking safety, it isn't just for people walking from one place. It's being able to get to a light rail station. It's I was inspired by my colleague Supervisor Hume, who takes his e-scooter and goes to the light rail, for the first mile and last mile. But if you can't cross a 4-lane intersection because you've got someone making a hard right turn on you to get to that light rail station, that's a danger. And that's many times in the sidewalk. So I did want to make a couple comments because there were questions about sidewalks. And I will say that both in the fatality on the sidewalk on Fruitridge and 58th Street, the fatality on Sutterville Road in Southland Park, the fatality on the sidewalk on Franklin, fatality two on the same sidewalk, crosswalk in North Natomas. These are all crosswalks, by the way. It was speed is the factor. So, and in fact, the courts in many situations have put the onus on municipalities, saying that while even we put more sidewalks, if they're not properly engineered or using some of these quick design builds, they create a false sense of security for the cyclist and the pedestrian because the motorists are moving so fast. So I want to just echo the fact on the need for investments. And I appreciate the recognition of Washington and Pennsylvania, but the costs are just different in California too. So I think that the reason why we need a regional pot is because even Sacramento that can put together something, some of these quick builds can quickly be in a escalate from 50 to 10,000, 50,000 to 100,000 to $250,000 just for a simple area there. So a smaller city, if you think about Folsom or even Woodland or others that have a lot of cut through vehicle traffic or trailer traffic that are cutting through, the ability to execute these are a challenge. I think a regional pot, whether it's a county or regional pot to help get these going, I think would be a big benefit. Last, I'll just point out here that I was very inspired when working with AARP because their approach has been a city for all ages. And the fact that I bike with my kids, so I take I take Broadway at times and I take Stockton Boulevard at times. And I've used those crossings that we've seen there. And the fact is we need to look at not only enforcement, that is a key. I think we need to make sure that we're enforcing and citing speeders and folks who are not following the law, but also the built design, because people will take, whether they're a driver, whether they're a pedestrian or a cyclist, they will take the easiest path. So if we can design the easiest path for people, that's definitely going to increase lives. But the one thing that AARP mentioned was that it's with the cost of insurance, the cost of the challenges with folks who are in their elderly years and the advancement of e-bikes, that you're going to see more seniors that are going to start using cycling and pedestrian as a real option, not first mile, last mile, but first 5 miles to last 5 miles because of the innovation. And so it's up to us to really push hard on finding these regional pots of infrastructure to address that, because that boom is coming of people who, just as much as I've never thought I'd see, adults on scooters, I was always a bike, but no, you see the number of people, that will be a trend that will continue. And we will be late to addressing those issues if we don't deal with them now. So I will stop there and just say that I appreciate the conversation. I think our earlier votes were a small step forward. So I really thank the Marysville Vision Zero, prioritization in the project development category. But we need to take a bigger step forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Guerra.
Chair Saragosa, we do
Yes.
have a member of the public with their hand raised now. Would you like to take that
Sure.
public comment?
Yep, absolutely.
All right. The speaker is Glenn Mandelkern, a citizen. Glenn, if you can hear me, you are in the room, and we are ready for your public comment. You have 3 minutes. Can you hear me, Glenn? Mr. Mandelkern, are you there? Going once.
Glenn,
going
you there?
Twice. Glenn?
All right, we can come back if.
Thank you.
Yes.
Quick comment, if I may. Ms. Simon presented a very useful catalog. It seemed like a pretty complete catalog of the mechanisms that can be employed either on new streets and challenge, as was brought up earlier, on legacy streets or routes are more difficult. We're very fortunate in Marysville in that Mr. Kratza, who runs Public Works of his own volition, has taken it upon himself to become more than just familiar. I'm certain he and Heidi Simon are on the same plane in terms of understandings, and he comes up with suggestions throughout the city. And I'd suggest to other cities that they have their folks become as familiar as Smart Growth America is on these topics, and then solicit their opinion on where these mechanisms can be employed, what's the priority and what have you. It's very useful. It's we have a real problem. We've got intersecting state highways. It was mentioned earlier that many of these deaths are along state highway routes, and people are afraid to cross those because they're so busy, which really inhibits active transportation. But the pluses we have are very interested Public Works Director, highly engaged on this topic, and it maps very closely with what Ms. Simon was presenting and makes me feel a lot more comfortable.
Thank you, Director. Director Kozlowski.
Yeah, 2 quick things. I'm probably inventing something that already exists, but to the extent that there becomes a pool of funding, and to the extent that we want to collectively set a target for what success looks like, it seems like we should, have the staff of SACOG, others, and the policy committee have a discussion about what a, similar to our pavement condition index is, what a pedestrian safety condition index is, so that we can ourselves as individual communities set targets and work towards those. So that would be one thing. The second thing is that something that we contend with in Folsom, because we have an enormous amount of cut through traffic to get around Folsom Lake, is that communities are not really in control of speed limits. And I know that, we're talking about calming devices, structural calming devices here principally, but we only have this tiny band in which we can adjust speed limits. And that's because of state, federal policy about how you set a speed limit. And most people don't understand that at all. What you have to do is a speed study. Most of you that are in elected office know this because you've gotten blasted by constituents over it. You have to do a speed study, and then you get to set the speed limit within 5 miles an hour of whatever the average driver feels is safe, right? So it's a chicken and egg exercise where you have to do structural changes to the road to get the average speed driven on the road down, and then do a new speed study and then set a speed limit when the public would actually be perfectly happy with us, making unilateral decisions that on East Natoma Street in Folsom, the speed limit really should be 30 or 35, not 45, and not the actual speed that most people drive, which is 55 or 60. So anyway, just to the extent that we can affect state, federal policy around speed limit setting, that would be an additional tool that would be useful in this particular context. Thank you.
If I may on that point,
Yeah.
There has been a recent update to the federal guidance to allow more discretion away from the 85th percentile rule, which is that rule that you have to follow the majority of driver speeds in a speed study. It follows the engineering discretion. So federally, you might have more coverage than you think. State-wise, I think my limited knowledge of California speed bills, I think you might have an uphill battle state-wise.
We do.
Yes.
I sit on the Delta Highway Coalition. The lead agency is like Real Vision, like out of Rio Vista, but most issues have been like Highway 12 and 160 in the Sacramento County part. And then we have two board members of two different fire districts that have to deal with daily carnage on those two roads. And then on Highway 12, there's a left turn lane on Jackson Slough Road in 12, and people use that as a passing lane when they're going through different counties. So yeah, it's not just like the urban areas. You got folks, like farm equipment, you got folks traveling on their bicycles on that road, as well as the cars.
Thank you, Director. Director Jennings.
Very, very quickly, I'm gonna ask this question because I don't know the answer. And I just want to know, are we a learning community? Are we a community that is learning from the counties that we have and the cities that we have and what each other is doing? And the reason I ask the question is because I learned a whole lot today from the two organizations presenting what maybe is going on in another city, Marysville and West Sacramento and all those kinds of things. I'm trying to figure out, how do I take what I've learned today back to the department in the city of Sacramento, and are they talking to each other? So should we become a learning community where we prevent a summit and we come up with our best practice and show it off to the rest of the world so that they see it? And does that already exist? So I don't have to come up with that BHAG, that big, hairy, audacious goal.
I know like Director Vegas might have an add-on to that.
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to share with you. So I think we're a learning community. I hope we are. I actually want to testify firsthand. The West Sacramento case study, I live right off of Linden. And I can tell you that for years, that was a huge problem because it's a huge loop. Wide lane, you can imagine how fast traffic goes around that road for several miles. And then there's a school at the other end of it. So that entrance going to the school. The city took a very proactive approach to it, maybe a bit unorthodox to do it. And I say this because oftentimes we see these case studies, we're not sure if the representation is exactly what happened. I can tell you, thank you, Kiara, it is exactly how it happened. The striping that was oversimplified made a huge difference, night and day, the traffic. And that was the number one complaint that the residents had was traffic was too fast, just all day long. The striping that occurred slowed down traffic exponentially. I say that anecdotally, I don't have the data in front of me, but I can tell you, driving it every day, it's made it much better. But I can also tell you, to Director Branscom's comment earlier, sometimes, this is the learning part, sometimes that requires a bit of leadership that isn't going to be appreciated right out of the gate. In fact, I suspect to some degree, those that initiated this aren't in office to tell the story anymore. It was that bad. Because people were so upset about change without consulting with them. But the reality was, I suspect, had you consulted, you probably wouldn't have gotten the community to agree to constrict it from what was once one big wide lane or two wider lanes to now one very thin lane with a lot of bulb outs and confusing things that slow traffic down. So I hope we're a learning community because in my experience firsthand, I don't know if I would have done it exactly the same way, but the results were exactly what was needed. So I would share that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
One quick question here, and it prompted the remarks that maybe the feds have softened some of their guidelines, but our MUTCD, or maybe this is a question for Caltrans, or further detail, but so in the past, that's been sometimes our challenge, because I guess it's the manual on uniform traffic control devices, right, or all those pieces, is very restrictive. But I guess I wonder, I'd like to know, how are there changes where the feds have given us more latitude, but still that state document is restrictive? And if it is, then I think it prompts this organization to identify with our local traffic engineers to be in unison to say, we need to make these changes on the MUTCD, so that we can implement this. Because at times I've gone to, bring an idea forward, and then they're like, well, it doesn't fit the MUTCD, and so then cities can't do it. So I think, I don't know if you can, Sergio, if you can comment on that, and if not, then further details on that, diving into that.
Yeah, in fact, I was going to talk a little bit about that. Thank you for your question, Director Guerra, and also about your comment, Director Bolohan. Anytime there are safety concerns across the board in the state highway system, we want to know. We have monitoring programs. And I'll get to your question in a minute. So, and one of them is pedestrian safety. We really are concerned, like has been discussed here, with the uptick in fatalities, and there's various reasons on the state highway system. For example, many of them in the core urban areas across the state, and obviously here in Sacramento as well, is it happens on freeways. Well, what is a pedestrian doing on a freeway, right? You get into how can we exclude that, and what are the societal reasons for that? But back to your question, the MUTCD absolutely can have some challenges to it, but at the end of the day, it's a document that not just Caltrans, but a committee that looks into those requirements, gets together and looks at what needs to be updated. So absolutely, if take our specifications, MUTCD, we can work through those headquarters committees that brings in stakeholders to update that requirement to meet what needs to be met, and to be more focused on safety, pedestrian safety. That's where we want to go, which is obviously the case, as well as there's also engineering knowledge. The MUTCD has a lot of flexibility within it. So your traffic engineers can still say, hey, this is what it's not a shall, it's a should, or it's recommended. But if you have good engineering reasons why you're going to deviate from it, your engineers can do that as well. But by the same token, if there are a lot of exceptions to MUTCD policy that we should be looking at, absolutely, we can start looking at updating the MUTCD. Back to your questions. And again, anything that's in the state highway system, we have monitoring programs that look at fatalities, crashes, and so on. But if we're missing, the areas of concerns, please let us know. We want to look at those, and we want to set up countermeasures.
Well, Mr. Chair, to that point, I think it's important for SACOG to comment on the MUTCD on where we can do it, because as much as I'd like to say, hey, let's go and just do our own thing, even though it's a guiding document for legal purposes, and for when cities do something, the MUTCD is the document that cities can say, hey, look, we followed good engineering practices so that we didn't do something reckless because we thought it might be good. So I think that's the engineer side of me coming out and saying, and the advocate side of me, let's just go do it. But the engineer side of me said, let's review the MUTCD, let's comment on it, have SACOG send a letter to Caltrans and the committee so that they can review that, because I understand it's a statewide document.
Well said. And I think even on top of that, my understanding too is then where I've run into this is you also can't enforce speed. So then I run into a problem, like even if I have a deviation, I can't have my police department enforce speed in those areas, because now we're out of compliance with that 85th percentile. So there's some, I think.
So there's the MUTCD, which is a document that we can, through the committee, get comments and look at making changes. Speeds, that's state law, if you will. That's a different discussion, obviously.
Gotcha. So there's a lot more to your point. I mean, there's a lot more into Director Kozlowski. There's
rebalancing pedestrian and vehicle
yeah.
Chair-
Yes.
Sorry. We do have our public commenter back. Would you still like
yes,
to take
let's,
that
let's
now?
put him through.
Thank you. Glenn, you're in our meeting. Can you hear us?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. We're
can.
ready for your
very
comment.
good.
You have
Well,
3
thank
minutes.
Okay, thank you for giving me this chance. I decided to change to another device. I would like to express my appreciation for the presenters. This is very timely. Last month, September, was Pedestrian Safety Month, and specifically, I wanted to say that Sacramento Police was giving advice to both drivers and pedestrians. And one important message they gave there is that drivers and pedestrians need to cooperate with each other. I've noticed there's been a lot of emphasis on drivers. However, pedestrians also have to take responsibility. One thing that does help a lot is at crosswalks. If it's timed, if you have a timed countdown, that really helps a lot. I'm also we just had speaking of it of scooters, we just had an accident of somebody run down. I live in Citrus Heights. This occurred on Sunrise Boulevard, so I'm glad to see attention is being brought to that. One other problem here throughout Sacramento County is that we have places where sidewalks just abruptly end, and then as pedestrians, we don't know what to do. I've also found that the California Office of Traffic Safety is very helpful in giving pedestrians advice. One thing I learned from them is the importance of pedestrians to make eye contact with drivers. So I'd like to see that emphasized too. And my last comment on this is I'd like to see, just like we hear a lot of messages of don't text and drive, I'd like to see maybe don't text and walk. I'm fearful of pedestrians colliding with other pedestrians. I really think that more attention needs to be given in this area in education. So I thank you again for letting me speak.
Thank you, and we appreciate your comments. All right.
Chair Saragosa.
Yes.
And just make a few comments.
Yeah.
I've been involved in this issue for quite some time, and I feel quite passionate about it, as I'm getting the sense that all of you do too. 20 years ago, I worked on and ran a Safe Routes to School bill in the California State Legislature, and everybody at that point said there's no way you can get this bill signed. At that point, the common practice was, back to crosswalks, that we were taking out mid-block crosswalks. We were taking them out because they were seen as dangerous because they would give pedestrians, quote unquote, a false sense of security. So if you are still seeing this happen, I would suggest that's a red flag, right? So the report title being dangerous by design, the point here is there are things that we need to do intervention-wise in the physical environment, right, that can increase safety. And those mid-block crosswalks where we have those really long blocks, this is human desire, right? You want to go to the shortest distance, two points. And if young kids and school children, if you take that crosswalk away, they will still cross there. So the answer is not to take them away. The answer is what design interventions can we do? And 20 years ago, look, we didn't have a lot of the things that are now legal. We didn't have the flashing lights and the Santa Rosa crosswalks and other things. But I just want to put that emphasis on that design. And in this season of getting out there and engaging and some of you door knocking, I would encourage all of you to do some walking audits. Now, we just passed Walk a Child to School Day, October 2nd. Doesn't have to be a national day once a year. These walking audits are fantastic. And if you're interested in doing some with your community, getting out there, looking at where, and Civic Thread is, they're experts in this and giving you advice. Getting your community members, not, looking at streets, looking at where things could be maybe fixed with quick build. Many of you have wondered about quick build and the project in Marysville. Thank you to the Public Works Director, Vincenzo, who said that was funded by a SACOG mode shift grant. Very small. Very small. You saw those price tags up there. They almost don't even raise up that level. So you just approved the funding round framework in your prior action today. There is no reason that your jurisdictions can't put forward quick build projects for these funding round frameworks over the next 12 months. And I think we are a learning community, Director Jennings. And your engagement this morning has been fantastic. And I sense a lot of interest in this. So we'll think a little bit about some follow-up with Smart Growth America, some tools. Actually, there's a state law our staff just let us know about that here just passed in California that does allow you to a little bit more intervention on the speed limits and set them down. So we'll follow up with resources, we'll follow up with some ideas. You've got a funding round coming up next year. We would love to see some of these projects. I joked with my staff in the back of the room, they may be too cheap to even be eligible. I was worried about that, but I'm told that it's okay. $10,000 will still, that's a little bit of, but, and there you go. They're too cheap. No. So we'd love to see some of those. We'd love to provide some follow-up. And yeah, great discussion this morning, and our staff is here. I think you've given us lots to think about.
Right, and that was just, thank you, James. That was a great summation, because I know I think you've heard from all of us. There's some question marks, some ideas, some thoughtful comments on what to do going forward. So thank you for that. We'll have something come back to the board as we go forward. And I'm sure I want to thank Heidi, Kiara, and David for all the information as well this morning. I'm pretty sure they'll make themselves available as well if individual jurisdictions have questions. Vincenzo, it sounds like, we can have you as be the person to go to for our different jurisdictions to talk about.
Easy, easy.
Sorry, Mayor. But great. That was great to highlight those local projects.
That's part of the learning community that Rick was talking about.
Yep.
That's how technology got exchanged in ancient times. Different communities that happen onto something and they'd learn, and that's how they progressed.
That is correct. All right. Well, with that, we'll go ahead. I want to thank everybody again on this one, and we got some reports. We'll go quickly through here. So we'll go on and move to our reports into item 9, which is our REI update, and hand it over to Director Jennings.
Thank you very much. I'll be very quick. Before we start that, I just want to give a friendly reminder on the post-workshop survey that we just had. And if you have any other questions or any other BHAGs that you want to present, make sure we fill this out and get that going. So back to what I'm here for, which is the Race Equity and Inclusion Working Group. I want to let you know that we met on September the 20th. This was our 7th meeting together as a working group. And while my schedule wouldn't allow me to attend that meeting, I have an incredible teammate and colleague who stepped up in my place. To my right, Director Galdo. I'm gonna get that right. Galdo. All right, get it right. She stepped in to chair the meeting and did an incredible job. And so I want to introduce to some and present to others Director Galdo, who's going to provide the report out.
Thank you so much. And I'll be quick, I promise. I'm not sure if it's a dream or a nightmare to be the backup to Director Jennings, but I will try to be the Steve Young to your Joe Montana. Sorry, I don't know who the Kenny Stabler's backup was, so I couldn't go a radar for you. So. Just real quick, we had a really good meeting in September. Found out, I think we all agreed that meeting in person that we're back does give us some benefits. Small groups that we can break out into, which certainly helps us develop some relationships. But in our group meeting, we really looked at what progress have we made, and as we're implementing our action plan, what should we be doing over the next 2 years? So some of the things, staff prepared a great overview, and it showed some of the progress towards our practice goals, our program goals, and our operations goals. And then we broke out into small groups, and we really addressed a couple questions, which I'll share with you. Are there promising practices that have come out of the work we've done so far? Are there additional barriers we need to work on? Do the success measures of the plan reflect progress and what we should be doing different or others? And then what opportunities are there for the working group to contribute to the goals for next year? So staff's prepared a great summary. I know you're going to all read every word in detail, but I'll give you just a couple of the highlights. There are some promising practices and some opportunities. We agreed the offsite board meetings and tours of jurisdictions have been really helpful for our understanding of the uniqueness of our cities and counties, our communities. We definitely appreciated engaging our tribal communities, and we'd like to do more of that and reach out. And then we really felt like we benefit from the real life case studies of people and communities, and we'd like to do a little bit more of that as well. And felt like the SACOG's worked with community-based organizations and local government partners, and we think that brings a more positive impact than the common practice of uniform equity definitions and criteria. So we're going to do a little bit. I think the key in all of this is outreach, and who we can get to. We do have our next meeting on November 1st. Now it'll be my turn. I will be filling that bucket, my James Bond bucket list, and I will be spending the Dia de los Muertos in Mexico City. So hopefully I make it back. I'm so excited. I'm going to go see what it's all about. So look forward to the next one. Thank you.
Very cool.
Thank you, Director. I'll close with this. We have one more meeting, as she said, on November the 1st, and that's when the working group will be finalizing recommendations for updates to the Racial Equity Action Plan and focus on activities for next year. Next year, we're looking at the onboarding of some of our new members. We know we're going to be having new members. How do we onboard them and make it comfortable for them to be able to understand all the work that we've done in the past so that they feel comfortable in contributing to the future? Want to make sure we do that, create more opportunities for current members to connect with us on a more regular basis. So we're also looking at that. So current members and new members, how can we make sure that they're involved in this process and their voices are being heard? So we're excited about this work, and we're excited about the work that we're going to be doing going forward. We need your help. We need you as a part of our team to help us make this plan better as we move into this next year in 2025. So that's our report out.
Great. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Jill. You have any questions? We'll go to, we have time for, so Miguel, if you want to do a quick readout on the Mega Region Working Group summary.
So Miguel couldn't join us.
Gotcha.
So I'll do a super quick.
All right, perfect.
We had the last Mega Region Working Group of the year, was the end of September. We had a great presentation from all three agencies on zero emission, electrification, hydrogen fueling initiatives. Miguel Mendoza did present from our region, Northern California zero emission vehicle, heavy duty vehicle study that is just winding up, which is going to come to the Transportation Committee next month. So I'm just giving you a quick preview because I think this board will be real interested. So we're looking at basically locations and sites and a strategy for charging or fueling. So either hydrogen or electrification, multiple fuel paths on heavy duty vehicles. Actually, that study drilled down into specific sites across the 16 Northern California counties, many of which are in this region. We think are very exciting. By the way, congrats to SACRT that won a $77 million hydrogen fueling grant award out at McClellan. So that's a very interesting, intriguing opportunity there. That concluded the Mega Region Working Group for the year. We will be vice chair. The SACOG will take the vice chair seat next year, which means we will then ascend into chairing that group in 2026. So that's my report.
Thank you, James. And we'll go ahead. Any board members like to report anything else?
I would
Dr.
just like to
Thomas?
thank everyone for coming to El Dorado County last month. We really enjoyed welcoming you, and thank you all for making the trip to see the bounty of our county and our fabulous city of Placerville.
Victor, one
Yes,
one quick one.
Dr.
Saturday is we will be closing out our concert series at Quarry Park with Macy Gray as our.
Very
so
nice.
If anybody has a desire to be my guest, please call me. You know how to find me.
Great. Awesome. Thank you,
No.
Jill.
Thanks.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Seeing none, we have our receive and file item that.
Chair Saragosa, I'm
Yes.
sorry to do this,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I've got
absolutely. Go for it.
I'll be quick. So your November and December board meetings will be in this boardroom again, but at 9 a.m. start time. We can revisit those start times, but it is helpful, I think, to get you out of here by noon. Remember, your November board meeting is a week early. I think that's the CSAC conflict, whatever conflict it is. It's November 14th. So remember that, 9 a.m. here and December. We do have a lunch in November between the committees, Transportation and the Land Use Committee. It's the extension of the Transportation Committee next month, November 7th. All board members are welcome to attend a lunch, this time featuring Evan Schmidt from Valley Vision, who's going to be talking about the Regional Economic Prosperity Strategy and the new California Jobs First funding that I think will have a lot of resonance for all of you here. That's money that's coming into the region for economic prosperity. Food and agritourism that we just mentioned is one of those sectors. And then finally, look for that follow-up email from Lynette, which she'll be sending out with more information on the workshop from Smart Growth America, from Civic Thread, and other resources that, again, you all have inquired about this morning. And with that, thanks very much. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Yeah, and again, I want to thank everybody for coming on at the earlier time of 9 a.m. I just thought it was easier than people, trying to duck out before noon or because everyone's busy. So thank you for that. So in this case, now I get to give you back a half an hour. So with that, the meeting is adjourned today. Thank you.